Mike, I've been in the technology business for probably the better part of 25 years. Spent a lot of time with some of the large major service providers, and during the course of my career, had an opportunity, probably going back 7, 8 years ago, to work with a bunch of folks that just had a wealth of talent, right? Data scientists, folks that were cloud focused from an architect and engineering perspective.
Welcome back to another episode of Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. And today, my guest is John Julia from Pinnacle AI. Welcome to the show, John.
Mike, thanks for having me. Very appreciative to give me the platform, obviously, to talk a little bit about Pinnacle AI.
Really glad to have you here. So yeah, let's jump in. Tell me everything there's to know about Pinnacle AI's business model and what they're up to.
Mike, I've been in the technology business for probably the better part of 25 years. Spent a lot of time with some of the large major service providers, and during the course of my career, had an opportunity, probably going back 7, 8 years ago, to work with a bunch of folks that just had a wealth of talent, right? Data scientists, folks that were cloud focused from an architect and engineering perspective. Over the years, we kind of went our separate ways. A bunch of folks went to some of the larger hyperscalers out there like Google and AWS. I continued my career in technology. About a year and a half ago, I left a large service provider. I went to a smaller company, right, in MSP space, and I received a call from a gentleman, Rajiv Kamal, who was our CEO, and he's a guy that I'd worked with. Again, data scientist. He was working at AWS, and decided to leave because he was noticing a business problem I think that we all noticed. So at a high level, from Pinnacle AI, really what we do is we design and we implement proprietary custom solutions, right, based on artificial intelligence, machine learning, really focused on modernizing and optimizing business processes and functions. We're heavily on the side of generative AI and building innovative generative AI models that kind of produce high quality, realistic content, right, with minimal human intervention. They were working on, when I say they, Rajiv and a handful of folks from a data science perspective, working on solving a common problem that we see in technology, something that I've been talking to customers about for probably, right, the past 15 years. And that's really the explosive cost for living in the cloud. If you remember years back, there was really kind of a transition from companies owning their own data center to kind of being in a hybrid type of environment, right, and wanting to migrate, obviously, to public cloud infrastructures. The problem is that once customers were able to migrate into the cloud, they realized that their costs for being in that cloud environment were not as projected. I often use the analogy of a cruise ship, right? You want to go on a vacation, you think, oh, I'm going to buy, right, I'm going to buy a vacation right onto a cruise ship, and it's all inclusive, right? It's going to be cheap vacation. I can focus on having a good time. The problem is that once that cruise ship leaves the dock, you realize, well, it's not really all inclusive, right? Every time I want to get into my room, they charge me. Every time I want to get out of my room, they charge me. I want to go to the restaurant, right? They charge me. I want to leave the restaurant. They charge me. I go to the bar to have a drink, right? They charge me to walk into the bar. Drinks are free, right? To get access, right? There's a charge. Well, you want to leave the bar and go back to your room. There's a charge, right? There's an egress charge, right? So companies start out with this, right? They start out with essentially pro forma of cost, right? Based on anticipated utilization of cloud resources. And then they realize once they're on this cruise ship, there's no way out. There's no way off. And that kind of gave rise to what we call FinOps, right? So there's a lot of companies out there that are looking at the cost optimization of cloud, right-sizing environments, ways to maybe extract less files or not necessarily extract data that you don't need to lower your egress charges. And that's great. But you can only lower your costs to a certain degree, right? There's still, right, you still need instances, you're still paying for compute, you're still paying database, right? You're still paying for storage. A bunch of the folks with Pinnacle AI, right, again, working for the hyperscalers, what they realize that if you really want to lower your cloud costs and control your cloud environment, the FinOps approach will only do so much. You really have to look at modernizing your cloud environment. So when we talk about cloud modernization and we look at AWS and we look at Google and we look at Azure, they're constantly innovating as well. There's a concept today, right? One of the more popular products in AWS is the EC2 environment, right? Which acts and looks a lot like a traditional data center, except it's just virtualized. However, the truth of the matter is that the hyperscalers are moving really to serverless-based architectures. That provides you the ability to dramatically reduce your costs. However, you have an architecture, you have cloud infrastructure. How do I actually modernize my cloud? And we've noticed that there's a lot of challenges that companies have when they're on legacy cloud infrastructure, moving to more of a serverless-based architecture that are really going to control your costs and reduce them holistically and sometimes substantially. So that was how Pinnacle AI was born. Right, we're using machine learning, generative AI to solve that problem. And then obviously, right, when we start talking about large language modeling, there's a million applications, right, that, we're working with our customers, right, to kind of create content, right, that generative content, right, that can be developed by a machine as opposed to a human being. So hopefully that gives you a high level overview of Pinnacle AI. Talk more specifically about our cloud modernization product. We call that Comm AI, right? A couple of things that we noticed, Mike, is that there are some challenges that are fairly common in customers when they're looking to modernize their environment. First and foremost, product selection. AWS has over 200 products and services, right? So what products and services are best for me? What products or services are going to optimize my desired business outcome and control my costs? Even if you can rifle through the 200 different products and services, right? For example, that AWS offers, right? What does that architectural diagram look like, right? Obviously, right, there's a correlation to the products and services, right? There's workflows. So how do I create that design, right, with products that I'm not really familiar with? Once I create a design, right, the next challenge is, how do I know what my projected costs are going to be? If I'm paying X today and that number, that X, is greater than what I thought when I first entered the cloud, how do I know if I modernized, right? What are my projected costs for modernization? And then the two other challenges that companies have, right? I know what products to use. I can create a diagram. I can predict my costs. But how do I, right? Now I got to write Terraform code, right? Now I have to, right, use, the code as a service, right? To start provisioning my cloud resources. And finally, even if I know how to work with that Terraform code, what are the implementation guidelines? So what Comm AI does, unlike, for example, the traditional FinOps tools that are out there, we will ingest in our cloud transformer all of the workloads that a customer is currently running in their environment. And then we use AI/ML to select the right products based upon what the functional and non-functional business requirements are of the customer. The machine will actually create the architectural diagram for the customer. We have a cost projection model that's built into Comm AI. Comm AI will actually write the Terraform code for the customer and then deliver the implementation guidelines as well to the customer. So it's almost like a virtual solution architect that can process information, deliver results in in a matter of minutes, as opposed to months and sometimes even years figuring out all of those different steps in modernizing your cloud journey.
Well, that's interesting. It sounds like you guys help the client focus, and that's something that my sponsor, Magic Mind, would love. I mean, one of the issues that my tech executive clients have is that they need more focus, and so some of them they use coffee to deal with it. Just caffeine is
Right.
a go-to resource. Even myself, I used to think that energy drinks and coffee on a regular basis was a good way, and it concerned my wife because she heard so many people having heart problems from ingesting too much caffeine. So I looked for alternatives, and then I found Magic Mind. It's just a little shot. I drink it in the morning, and it's increased my focus beyond anything I get from energy drinks or coffee. Super effortless to use. It has matcha, nootropics, and adaptogens, which are all really popular these days to help bring clarity and focus. And so I used to be really easily distracted, but I use Magic Mind on a daily, and it's kept me on top of my game. So now, my afternoons are just as strong as my mornings. And so, if any of the listeners are like me and they're having trouble staying at 100% throughout the day, Magic Mind is something you should check out. You can go to magicmind.com/gaining technology and join a community of go-getters. The Magic Mind team has a special offer for my listeners, though. You get 50% off a subscription if you sign up in the next 10 days, or 20% off a single purchase. Just use my code Tech Leadership. Again, magicmind.com /gaining technology, and use the code Tech Leadership. But hurry, because the 50% discount is only valid for 10 days after the airing of this episode. You can also head over to Sprouts Farmers Market store and grab a few bottles to try. So, yeah, Magic Mind. It's a pretty good product. But like I said, it sounds like
So
you're getting.
I was just going to say, it sounds like Magic Mind may have just found a new customer because you're talking to a guy that rifles through at least 4 or 5 cups of coffee before 11 a.m., right? So I trust me, as soon as we're done, obviously, with this conversation, I'll be on the Magic Mind website myself.
Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. It really is, and it's all natural. That's the key, And like I say, with a discount, you can't go wrong. So tell I noticed in reviewing your website. I'm a Las Vegas guy. I've been here now for 2 years, and I noticed that one of the industries you work with is gaming and entertainment. How is Pinnacle helping the gaming and entertainment industry?
Our core focus is obviously AIML, generative AI, right? And there's a lot of branches to that, right? Whether it's natural language processing, right? Expert systems, so forth and so on, right? But there's, I'd say there's probably two other categories that are very closely aligned with artificial intelligence. One is obviously cloud, right? Where those foundation models sit, where the transformers are actually, where the machines are actually being trained. So that's a very big area of expertise that we have. But then the third complementary service that we're heavily involved in is obviously data science, right? And there is a correlation, right, between data science and AIML. I'm involved in thoroughbred horse racing. It's an industry a little bit behind, let's say, the technology times. We're doing a lot in the gaming sector, really from a data science perspective. When we look at AIML, right, there's a progression. And when we're talking about data science or analytics, right, there's really kind of three different phases. One we talk about descriptive analytics. Then we talk about predictive analytics, right, being able to take past events in that descriptive model and start predicting future events. And then the final stage of data science or analytics would be that prescriptive analytics. I can describe what's going on today. I can predict based on correlating data what will happen in the future. But then how can I use analytics, right, to actually prescribe or solve the problems that I know that will occur in the future, right? So we are, heavily involved, right, from a gaming, sports and gaming perspective. in the analytics perspective. And that's a journey. It's not a destination, right? So when we take something like horse racing, as complex as it may be, right? Just like in any athletics, right? There's an efficiency of motion, right? Related to horse racing, right? When a horse is running, how efficiently is that horse's stride, or human for that matter, right? Well, whether you're swinging a baseball bat or a golf club. And there are subcategories of AI, ML, right? We call them CNN or convolutional neural networking, where we can actually take images of an athlete performing and, right, notice where there may be flaws or inadequacies, right, of the utilization of or the efficiency, how they're running, how they're swinging a golf club, how they're swinging a baseball bat. Going from the analytics piece, using the data that we're collecting and warehousing and creating data lakes, mining that data, and now being able to implement artificial intelligence to be able to find those data points and those similarities within data. The correlation between data is something that really can be applied to just about everything in life. We certainly found a niche in the sports and entertainment industry, right, from that perspective.
Yeah, I find it really interesting because I mean it talks about things like fan engagement, biomechanical analysis, performance analysis, which you were just speaking about, and even health and injury prevention and betting analytics. I mean, I think casinos, they have it pretty wired. It's an industry that's been around forever, but this could take it to a completely new level for them as far as increasing the odds even more in their favor. Um,
Absolutely.
it's it's interesting. I had never thought of using AI for that purpose. But how does it help with injury prevention?
Knowing, for example, again, we kind of get back to what we call CNN or computer vision. You can pick up anomalies in the movement of a horse or a person, right, that can show things that the human eye can never detect. If there's a ligament issue, horse may look fine to the human eye, but if we can pick that up through computer vision and see that biomechanical movement, we can forecast or foretell the possibility of injury as well. We can also take statistical data of where a horse may develop an injury. Is it in the beginning part of the race? Is it when a horse is crossing the finish line? Is it at the 3/8 pole, right? So we can then start narrowing down, where or what part, start analyzing the data to find out if there's specific aspects of a particular racetrack, a particular race that's written, right? If there's commonalities or correlations in data lead or would lead to an injury, to lead to an injury.
That makes sense. That totally makes sense. I know that, gosh, maybe 10 years ago in the bodybuilding industry, people started making use of like EKG like devices that they'd put on the athletes, and then they could optimize the movements that they were doing to
Absolutely.
their body, though, like not just in general, right? And it would show them like which parts of the body are heating up. Well, that's not the muscle we're targeting, so we need to change the movement a little bit so that it heats up the right area. It's really interesting, but I would imagine that with the ability to add like an analysis of the actual video of the movement,
Yeah.
that would take it to a completely different level, it seems like.
Yeah. And Mike, we're seeing that technology really kind of across multiple injuries. For example, right, we're seeing that a lot in manufacturing, where you have an assembly line and, right, just for the sake of argument, right, you're making widgets. There may be a defect or a flaw in a part that's coming off the assembly line that the human eye would never be able to pick up. A widget looks like a widget looks like a widget, right? By using CNN and computer vision technologies, you can pick up those flaws in design or manufacturing that may lead to the breakdown of the greater product, right? Or may lead to personal injury if being used, right? So these are technologies, right, that we're starting to slowly see. industries use from a preventative occurrence, right, that may lead to personal injury, right, other tragedies, right, that may be associated with the, with the product itself.
Well, as someone who was a chief technology officer, one of the things that I'd always have brought to me back in the day was, ergonomic issues. And I kind of wonder if maybe we could see the technology go in a direction where it could take a look at a person's workstation and how they work in their workstation and optimize the placement and height of like different shelves and whatnot so that they don't get repetitive motion injuries. It just sounds like it's something that's a potential. I mean, if you can look at a widget and determine something that you can't even tell by the human eye that's broken, I would imagine you could probably pick up on, if it was programmed correctly, you could pick up on almost anything, right?
Absolutely. Mike, we have a product in development right now that's kind of designed, right, to enhance education. One thing right, and that's essentially using convolutional neural network technology where we know that, for example, students learn in different formats and fashions, right? That you may have a student that retains information or learns information by watching a video. You may have a student that retains information or learns information better by reading or conducting some sort of task, right? Solving a problem. Maybe it's looking at a picture, right? So using again CNN technology, right? We're working on a platform right now that will give a student a series of tests based on different learning attributes, right? Watching a film, looking at a movie, looking at a picture, reading, solving a problem, and maps over 450 different points within facial recognition. So we can determine eye movement, right? We can determine cheek movement. Is the student engaged? Are they not engaged? And then, right, by giving them a series of quizzes afterwards, right, let artificial intelligence in the machine kind of map that facial recognition with the actual test results. So again, to your point, whether you're sitting in a queue or whether you're, typing on a keyboard, developing carpal tunnel syndrome, right? CNN, computer vision technology, AML can be applied in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, no, that's intriguing because I mean, that's another thing that's always been at odds in society is like, how do you assess teachers like in their performance? Because when you think of it from just a straight up business perspective, people say, oh, well, how well did the students do on standardized tests? How well did they do on this? How well did they do on that? But what people seem to forget is you could be a third grade teacher, and this year you get all the kids who are top performers in your class. So you're going to look like a
Right.
genius. And then next year, you get all the low performers in your class, and people go, what happened to that teacher? And it's got nothing to do with
Exactly.
the teacher. And I think if they were to look at if they could look at the trends and see how did that person improve over this time versus how did they just flat out perform, it could go a long way towards assessing teachers because there needs to be a way to assess that. And I think AI is going to be the way to do that because it's interesting. There's a story, I've told this story multiple times on this show, but there's a story about a woman whose son went to like one of these bounce house places and suffered an injury. And then after that, they were having all sorts of strange problems and went to doctor after doctor, and no one could solve it. And she was so frustrated as a mom. And so one night she was up and she just thought, you know what? Chat GPT, here I come. And she took
Right.
the MRI report, the CT report, all of the reports from the doctors, and she keyed it into Chat GPT, and it came back with a suggested diagnosis that she brought to his neurologist. And his neurologist looked at it, scratched his head, shook his head, and went, I would have never thought of this, but I think this might be it. And it turned out that was what it was. And why do I say that in this context? Because it took the data and it wasn't emotional about it. It didn't say, oh, this is a little 3-year-old boy. I'm so scared. I need to fix this problem. It just went, look, here's the data and here's what it tells me. Now you do with that
Right.
what you do with that. And I think it's the same thing with teachers or perhaps even doctors. I mean, there's ways to assess these things without emotion just purely data driven. And then there's no argument about it later by anybody because everybody's measured by the exact same standard in that industry. So I can see that going there. I mean, you guys have a lot of interesting really interesting things on your website as far as like the things that you do. Like I was looking through the educational aspect and like how it can help teachers understand performance from students. I mean, these are things that will just go a long way towards improving student education, if you ask me. So, but this has been
Absolutely.
interesting. You know, this has been an interesting chat, and I think we actually have to do this again sometime because there's so much we like we talked about before we got on the show. We could talk about this topic for weeks straight. And I mean, we've barely
Right.
scratched the surface, but we've kind of run out of time. So why don't you let the audience know how they can connect with you and maybe if they want to engage with your company, how they can do that?
Sure, absolutely, Mike. I absolutely appreciate that. So you can reach us at www.pinnacleai.net. If you are looking, again, if you're an organization that is overburdened by cloud costs, we actually have a demo that you can register for on our website, where we'll take you through Comm AI. We also have large language models demos, right? So if you're looking to enhance your contact center or interject generative AI, right? To modernize, right, process or job function, right? There's our website's a great place not just to get information, but actually to see some of this technology, right, in use.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that those get into the show notes and to the YouTube description. But thanks again for being here. I truly, truly appreciate it.
No, Mike, I absolutely appreciate it. Again, right? We could probably talk for weeks about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So hopefully we get a chance to chat sometime soon.
Agreed. Agreed. I'd love to do that. So, everybody, thank you for being here this week. Listening to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. We'll be back next week with another episode every Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We release an episode. And you guys have a great week.